This morning's reading is from the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Everyone talks about freedom. All around the world, different people, different races, different countries are fighting for freedom. But what is freedom? If we see a child who is 2 or 3, perhaps 4 years old, we find a free human. Why is this human free? Because this human does whatever he or she wants to do. The human is completely wild, just like a flower, a tree, or an animal that has not been domesticated. Wild. And if we observe humans who are 2 years old, we find that most of the time these humans have a big smile on their face and they're having fun. They are exploring the world. They are not afraid to play. They are afraid when they are hurt, when they are hungry, when some of their needs are not met, but they don't worry about the past, don't care about the future, and only live in the present moment. Very young children are not afraid to express what they feel. They are so loving that if they perceive love, they melt into love. They are not afraid to love at all. That is a description of a normal human being. As children, we are not afraid of the future or ashamed of the past. Our normal human tendency is to enjoy life, to play, to explore, to be happy, and to love.
I want to go back to that opening reading that Nathan shared, that as children, we're not afraid of our future or ashamed of our past. I mean, that is really a huge line in there, isn't it? And that our normal human tendency is to enjoy life, to play, to explore, to be happy, and to love. We tend to lose that innocence, that sense of wonder and excitement to simply be alive as we become responsible adults. We get caught up in that. And the truth is this, absolutely nothing needs to change, because even as adults, believe it or not, we're still called to enjoy life, to play, to explore, to be happy, and to love. It doesn't matter how old we are. When we do that, we feel great. We generate that feeling of happiness and joy around to everybody who's around us. Is that not heaven on earth? It makes a difference that we play life, that we enjoy life. It absolutely makes a difference. And it makes a difference not only in our lives, but in the world around us. And maybe that's just in our own little world, and maybe that is the entire planet. The story that some people like to tell themselves is that one person doesn't make a difference, and nothing could be further from the truth, because one person can make all of the difference. We believed that we mattered when we were young. We believed that we could make a difference. Why not believe it now? And why not put it into action? We have that ability. I say we change that story so that life has an opportunity to touch our soul. So life can engage us to participate in the kind of world that we want to experience in our lives on a daily basis. We want to shift our perception so it gives us free rein to feel what we already know deep in our souls. And what we know is that we're all one, and that what I do affects you, and that what you do affects me. Let's hold a vision that helps free that optimism that we feel inside, that energy, let that energy out and loose. Then support us in taking the steps to make our vision, our reality, a little more beautiful, a little more like we want it to look. Again, even if that means our own little world right here. Now I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we've probably all experienced hell on earth. Is that true? Okay. So we've experienced that. We know how that shows up. We know what that looks like. We know how we don't want that. So the alternative to that, the best alternative to that, is to create that heaven on earth, to experience that instead. I love what Wayne Dyer said. Heaven on earth is a choice that you must make, not a place you must find. Doesn't that make perfect sense? A lot of times we spend our life searching outside of ourselves and hoping that when we move to the other side, we go to that beautiful place. Well, we don't have to wait. We can have that right here and right now. It is already here. We just have to be awake enough to see it. We have to learn how to see it again, just like a child does. Experiencing heaven on earth requires that shift in consciousness, because as we do that, it changes how we see the world, how we experience our daily lives. And that shift can only take place when our mind becomes quiet. Now, when the inner world of our racing thoughts, that incessant chatter and the long to-do lists, when those things can grow silent, we begin to notice there is a stillness. That stillness is not only within, that stillness miraculously happens without as well. It's about clearing our mind. It's about becoming completely present in the moment. That's when that shift begins to take place. And you know why? Because we're not focusing on the past and we're not focusing on the future. We're right here. And being in the awareness of the now, we see clearly what's actually around us. We can discover just how beautiful this world is and how perfect it is just as it is, without trying to change what's happening. We notice then that the world is filled with that beautiful presence that is aware, that is awake, that is patient and loving. We open ourselves to that. That's when you know you've arrived at heaven on earth. And as you get there and you begin to look around, you see it everywhere. It's amazing. So what keeps us from experiencing heaven on earth or even considering it as a possibility is disbelief. And do you know what feeds the disbelief? None of you have this, I'm sure. But what feeds it is fear and worry. None of us have that. When we worry, when we agonize about problems, whether they're real or they're perceived, those distressing thoughts prevent us from seeing the beauty around us. When we worry, we live in that fear-driven mental world, and we feel distanced and removed from that power and that presence. As human beings, we love to rush on to the next thing, to the next problem, to the next worry, to the next self-improvement project, rather than stopping and taking a breath. It's just a constant move forward. Unfortunately, we don't stop long enough, literally and figuratively, to smell the flowers. That is where the threshold is to moving into heaven on earth. If you want to start experiencing that in your everyday life, all you need to do is make that conscious effort to create a sacred space. Maybe it's prayer, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's reading something spiritual that is very uplifting for you. Whatever works to stop that incessant, noisy thinking. Whatever works to find that heightened level of awareness. Because as we do those things, we begin to see and encounter the world exactly as it is, not as we perceive it. We perceive the world with names, ideas, judgments, and beliefs. They may or may not be true. That doesn't seem to matter to us, right? But that's how we see the world. Those are the things that have moved us away from our natural lives, from our pure essence. Look at whatever's around you as if for the very first time. I love that. That's what my grandson is going to be doing. He's starting to already. And that is such a joy, right? It's such a wonder for children. Let's move back into that space. Notice colors and patterns, and spatial arrangements of things, textures. That's what he's really into right now, is texture. Everything he wants to touch. And you know, it helps me see things differently too. It can't help it. And I know those of you who've had children or grandchildren really know what I'm talking about and can feel that with me. Open all of your senses, every single one of them. Be absolutely fascinated by what you see, feel, smell, taste, hear. Be absolutely fascinated and amazed. When we pay close attention, it's like everything's new, everything's different. The world around you may just be a little bit different than you think it is. When you bring love and you bring joy to your experience, life shifts. I know you know that. You already know how to love. Love everything unconditionally in the present moment. And see how the world around and within you shifts and changes with you. You don't want to spin your wheels thinking that you have to do it perfectly, because there is no perfect way to do it. You are called, we are all called, simply to do our very best in this moment. And we all know that can change moment to moment and day to day. Living life authentically has to do very much with that opening reading that Nathan shared with us. That feeling from childhood where all things were possible, not a care in the world. Excuse me, the feeling that everything we want to be, do, and have will magically happen. We have that knowing as children, don't we? When we're children, if we have an emotion, what? We express it. We don't worry about what other people think. Just not a lot of thought will go into that. We just do what we do. And if it's not appropriate in the moment, you know, as children, we don't really care. That's not our issue. The way you see and live your life is all about choice. It can be a blessing, it can be a curse. It can be heaven or it can be hell. You get to choose. It's 100% up to you. You have that personal responsibility for how your life shows up, how you see your life, and how you work with your circumstances. So what stops us from experiencing the life we want? Well, so many things. Maybe it's the government. Maybe it's our parents. Maybe it's religion. Maybe it's God. Maybe it's the weather. Have we all used those excuses at one time or another? But the truth of the matter is we hinder ourselves. We stand in our own way. And what happens as we grow older is we lose that magic that we had as children. We lose our openness to love and to vulnerability and realize something's not right, so we need to blame it outside of ourselves. If we have learned to take the role of a victim, for instance, we say something bad has happened to us and it's not our fault. Well, what happens then is we shut ourselves off from other people. We feel restricted in expressing our true essence, our true nature. And here's the deal. Here's a shock maybe for you. It's not God's fault and it's not the weather's fault, right? We get to hold that personal responsibility. It's a choice. And a choice is what you do with what's happened in your experiences along the way. There's a story I read of an elderly carpenter. And he went to his employer because he wanted to retire. He was done. He'd worked many years, and he said, oh my gosh, I want to spend time with my wife and my extended family. It's time. So the employer said, okay, I get it. But do me one last personal favor. I have one more house that I want you to build for me. Well, very reluctantly, the carpenter said, okay. So he rushed through the process. He used cheap materials. It was just kind of junk. So when the house was completely done, the employer met the carpenter at the front door. They did the inspection, and the employer handed in the keys and said, "This is your house. It's my retirement gift to you." Oops. He was shocked. If he'd only known that he was going to be building his own house, he would have done it all so differently. Well, so it is with us. We all build our own life, one step, one choice at a time, and sometimes we do it half-heartedly. Then it's kind of a shock to us when we realize that we have to live in that house with those consequences. Had we known, had we understood the concept of choice and attitude before, we would have probably made different choices. And that's okay. However, now we have the awareness and there's no going back. We can make conscious choices to build what we want from this point forward. Our life is like our personal building project. So always do your best. Remember, the choices that you're making in the moment are building your future. They're building your tomorrow. Our life is a manifestation of our personal reality. And we can change that reality anytime we want by choosing differently. Experiencing the freedom to be who we are is being clear of our own judgments, clear of identifying ourselves as a victim in any sense. We all still have that little child within us, that authentic self that really probably never grew up. It's in there. It comes out when we're feeling excited and we're full of wonder and full of joy, when something really fabulous happens and we can't contain ourselves. That's that little child inside of us. Or when we're painting or singing or writing or playing music, we're expressing ourselves in a meaningful way. Or, in my case, when you get to be a granny for the first time, right? All of a sudden, we're completely present with what's going on in our life. Our happiest moments are when that authentic self comes out. When we don't care about the past. When we aren't worried about the future. And instead, we are completely in the present moment. You can change your life situations anytime if you are not happy with the way it's unfolding. You do so simply by making different conscious choices, by living your own truth, by living your truth with conviction and with passion, by becoming aware of who you truly are and staying open to all possibilities. The world is not going to change for us. I think we all pretty much are clear on that one. From the very beginning of our journey, we have learned, and so we know that the only thing that needs to be changed is in our own mind, in the way we see things. Every single one of our interactions serves as a mirror, reflecting back to us so we can draw upon each experience for our own personal awareness, for our own personal growth. Now you really think about that. Every interaction, every experience is a reflection. So, if that's true, and I believe it is, why wouldn't we choose to live our lives with patience, with love, respect, and compassion, and have those qualities reflected back to us in every situation, in every relationship? Sort of makes sense. Use every single one of your moments to be happy, to do what you really enjoy doing. Like last week, I shared that story of slow-mo, skating along the San Diego beach. Do what you really enjoy doing. Enjoy life. Be alive. Be excited that you have one more day to be you. How cool is that? You can use your imagination using different eyes, different perception. Imagine that you have permission to be happy and to really enjoy your life. Imagine that. Imagine living your life without the fear of expressing your deepest desires. Imagine living your life without the fear of being judged by others. Imagine living your life without judging others. Imagine living without the fear of loving and not being loved. Imagine living your life without being afraid to take a risk and to explore your life. Imagine that you love yourself just the way you are. Now, as you imagine those things, understand, know, and recognize that each and every single one of those things is entirely and absolutely possible. You can live in a state of grace, that state of bliss, the dream of heaven. And only love has the ability to put you in that place. We were all designed to survive and thrive, no matter how our life experiences unfold. So we can begin to have the kind of life that we long for. We can begin living a new story of what it means to be human and part of humanity. We can begin creating heaven on earth right now and right here. Be strong in that knowledge. Hold on to that thought. So I invite you this week to choose a word, just one, and live the intention of that word every single day. And watch and be amazed at the shift and the changes that your life will take. And remember this, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Thank you for being here while I shared this truth as I understand it.